Welcome to this session on advanced care planning. Advanced care planning includes concrete steps to take in making legal, financial, and healthcare decisions for your future, but can also include philosophical concepts around how to live your life well, what matters most in life, and how to end well. Two members of OCRA's social work team are here to guide you through this topic. Both oncology social workers. Tracy Moore is OCRA's Vice President of Patient Support and Education, and Nancy Sincata is a nationally known psychosocial consultant. Thank you both for being here. I'll turn it over to you.
Tools and strategies for advanced care planning. Welcome. My name's Tracy Moore.
And I'm Nancy Sincata.
And we welcome you to this conversation about advanced care planning. What is advanced care planning? National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization says advanced care planning is making decisions about the health care you want to receive if you're facing a medical crisis. These are your decisions to make based on your personal values, preferences, and discussions with loved ones. But I think it's really important to talk about establishing goals of care. And goals of care is a fancy way of saying, like, what's important to you? What matters most to you? And in determining your goals of care, you need to understand your diagnosis, think about your short-term and long-term goals, possibly including a family meeting with your physician and your family, and personal discussions with your partner, spouse, children, friends. And another tool that's helpful is the What Matters Most to Me letter. So if you've got your goals of care, you know you've determined what's important to you, your family is in agreement or not, these are your healthcare decisions, you might want to document what your decisions are. And there's 4 primary ways you can document your healthcare decisions. And many times this is assigning someone to carry out your wishes. And other times it's actually a conversation between you and your physician and having a medical order on your decisions.
So now that we've gotten to this part, it's really interesting to think about who you are and what you need. And I think that Tracy and I both want to say that we appreciate that these are not particularly easy conversations to have or to think about. And sometimes they are things that you have never thought about in your life. We all have ways in which we interact with our family and our friends. And we don't want you to think that all of a sudden, those patterns of communication and those relationships are going to be different. So if you have somebody in your family that you're always disagreeable with, or who likes to tell you what to do, it's true that that will probably happen in parallel when you begin to have these conversations. And you need to think about what you want for yourself, what's important to you, and how you want to interact with your family and friends and who you want to interact with. This is not necessarily the kind of conversation or the kinds of conversations that you want to have with everyone. It's who you really want to identify in your network at this time in your life.
It's a really good point. This can be an individual decision. It can be the important people in your life to discuss this with, but it doesn't have to be a group decision, right? Nancy, you make such a good point. So in terms of the ways you can document your healthcare decisions, there is a healthcare proxy. The fancy name is Durable Power of Attorney for Healthcare proxy. And each state has a different form. This is a copy of the Nebraska form. They're free. You can download them online. Many of your physician offices or hospitals will have copies for you. It's important to have witnesses, to have the original, and to give the original to your healthcare proxy. Give copies to your physician and anyone else that you think is important in your family. And it's important that this can be revoked at any time prior to incapacity.
Now, this again is just another interesting point, which is this can be revoked, you can change it, and you need to be sure that you let the other people in your life know if you have changed it so that everybody is on the same page. But an important, simple thing too is once you've taken the time to do this, please be sure to make a mental note or even a written note of where you put it. Because often people find themselves at the most inconvenient moments trying to figure out, oh no, where is this form? So.
A living will is a written statement expressing your treatment wishes. And this needs to be witnessed and notarized.
Tracy, is this limited to treatment or is it about anything else as well?
This is generally about treatment wishes, right? And it's something you can discuss with your physician. Not necessarily is that required, but this is really about healthcare decisions.
And you would have this along with the healthcare proxy?
Many times this comes in place of a healthcare proxy. Your written wishes would be, this is who I name as a healthcare proxy. So you're doing the same thing in a different form, but other times you can have the two forms. This is my healthcare proxy and these are my wishes. You know, Nancy talked a little bit earlier about, like, these are not easy conversations. These are things that maybe you've never thought about in the past. And 5 wishes is a tool that can actually help stimulate the conversation and the thought process. It's a tool, but it also is something that as you're going through it, like a workshop, like a worksheet, you can document your wishes.
Now, go ahead, sorry.
No, please.
So when you have something like this and it says some states require it to be notarized, so you're having these like in detail either conversations or these very intimate thoughts. So you're not really writing them down in front of a notary, right? You do the process and then you bring it to a notary. So it's not that you have to share your feelings and thoughts with somebody who doesn't know you. Correct.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's true for all of the documents that are required to be notarized. You know, that's the signature that's important and the date at the time that the notary witnesses, right? Now, the other option is really a personal decision between you and your physician. These are medical orders. There are 10 states that use MOLST, medical orders for life-sustaining treatment, and 46 states that either have or are in progress of developing a POLST, physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. So this is something that lives in your medical record that you don't have to worry about carrying. Although most people keep a copy, some people keep it right on their refrigerator. When you see it's a bright color for a reason, so that anyone who would ever enter your home, whether it was an emergency medical professional or anyone else, would see it and understand that you already have determined medical orders. This evolves over time. You can, at any time, if your medical condition changes, you can have a conversation with your physician and the orders can change. But it's a living document that gets updated, and it's between you and your physician.
So Tracy, these are things that are out there for people to do, for people to understand, for discussions with their physicians. Do you have to do it? Is there anything that mandates that you do this?
No, not at all. Not at all. But for the purpose of this conversation, we want you to know what your choices are, right? And to make it easy. So if you decide this is important to you, to have your wishes documented, to have conversations with your family, to have conversations with your physician and have them help you make decisions. we want you to know how to go about it and what your choices are.
I've also been in situations where people have on the refrigerator, like who their doctor is, what their medications are, what they need in case of emergency. So this is one of those things, but it may be that people are already doing something like this with other material.
Absolutely. I think we've addressed what's the difference between the options. An advance directive documents your wishes and identifies who you want to represent you to have those wishes carried out. And they're only utilized when you are no longer able to make decisions for yourself. An advance directive is if you're able to make decisions to the very end of your life, you don't need to ever have someone else carry them out. You can make those decisions for yourself. But if you'd like to have them in writing, have it organized, and have someone represent you if you could not make the decisions, that's when you use those tools.
So Tracy, even if I could make the decisions and I could talk about it, but I didn't want to talk about it, I could hand you my advance directives with my wishes and tell you to take care of it, or whoever was the named person.
Yes, yes. Which is a nice thing to have a choice. Physician orders, the most are signed medical orders. And those live in a medical record, right? With you having a copy. So that's the difference between the tools. And when you're making these decisions, some of the things to think about, right, would be, do I want dialysis if I ever needed it? Do I want artificial hydration and nutrition? Do I want to be in a hospital or do I want to be home? How am I going to manage my symptoms, and what's important around managing symptoms?
And I think when you think about things like hydration and nutrition, you don't think about kind of the day-to-day ways that people hydrate, but you think about kind of an IV and being in a more complicated situation for care, generally needing somebody else to help administer that care. Now, sometimes the phases of clinical trials can be things that are happening shortly after you're diagnosed and things that you're thinking about, or they can come, several years into treatment. So all of these things have to be taken into consideration as to where you are, how close to diagnosis you are, the degree of comfort that you're experiencing. So there's a lot of things to consider in this, and there's a lot of moving parts, right? Like what may seem okay today may be different than what you're thinking a month from now, and you can change on the spectrum either way, wanting more or less care. Just because you decide today, I think I wouldn't want dialysis. Well, 6 months from now, if you were in that situation and had to make that decision, you might feel like you've met other people who are on dialysis. It seems like they have a comfortable life with a good quality of life, and you may want to do that. So nothing that you are deciding in each of these areas is something that has to be 100% the same going forward.
Shifting a little bit from medical decision making to how do you get your ducks in a row for financial and estate planning decisions? And what are some of the things you want to think about, consider in terms of planning? And these are things that, regardless of a diagnosis of cancer, it may be something you want to consider anyway to plan. There are power of attorney, durable power of attorney for financial, digital, and medical. We've already talked about medical, but if you were incapacitated, who would you want to handle your financial decisions and your digital footprint, your emails, your passwords, your banking access, all of those digital footprint? You might consider a will, creating a trust, Do you need short-term and long-term disability? How about life insurance? Do you have a care plan, or do you need to establish guardianship for dependent children? Do you have a plan for your pets? And then something you want to consider, do you have a more memorial plan for yourself? So really, what are these different steps? The durable power of attorney is a legal document assigning authority to act in all legal and financial matters. The last will and testament is a legal document expressing how you'd like your property and assets divided upon your death. And a trust, sometimes known as a living irrevocable trust, is a legal document that becomes effective immediately. You manage the trust until such time that you become incapacitated or die, at which point a trustee will manage the finances as you have expressed. You know, sometimes it's really important to gather these things together. Nancy mentioned earlier, where did you put that healthcare proxy? And in the time of crisis, it can be really hard to remember where all of these documents are. So sometimes it's really helpful just to have an easy place where it's all gathered. And things you might want to consider are, your short-term and long-term disability insurance, life insurance, bank account, any deeds, and contact information and passwords. Who's important to you? Having that list is always helpful.
And again, this could be a list that could help people at any time in life. I laugh when you say contact information and passwords, because passwords are quite a challenge for everybody at every stage. And I think that also part of what will be difficult for people in your life if it's not easy for them to find that information.
If you've got dependent children, underaged or adult children who might have special needs, you can create a special needs trust. You can have notarized permission for basic and health and dental care. Someone who can manage that for you. You might want to establish a guardianship plan. And this is where, you may consider beginning the conversation with your children.
And depending on how old your children are, these may be very different conversations, right? If you have very young children, they will understand what you're talking about in some ways, but if your children are adults, they will understand them in other ways. And I think that, the idea of advanced care planning, again, is a concept that any parent at any stage could have with any age child. And some of it is just really about thinking about the things that are important to you and the things that are important to your family, and talking about what people need in their life, what you need, what your family members need. So again, we'd want to just point out the consideration of thinking about developmentally where your children are at and what ages they're at, and being aware of what they do understand, what they don't understand, and what the implications of the conversations could be with them. And we have the same, but that people don't always think about their pets when they're planning, but pets are a really important part of all of our lives. And it's helpful to know that you have a plan in place so that you don't have to worry about what's going to happen to your pet. Hopefully, these are things that you can think about, and you can then, once you have a plan, relax a little bit about.
Some people decide it's really important to have a memorial plan, to plan a funeral, communicating preferences. Some have contracted and prepaid for funerals, while others leave that to family members. That's okay. But it's something, again, as you're doing advanced care planning, something to think about. Do you have a preference in terms of a memorial, whether it's a funeral, cremation, burial, anything that could happen. You might want to consider expressing your wishes or pre-planning it.
I think this is also one of those unique things that this can feel like this is really a burden to think about, or it could also feel like it's a really creative process. And think about, like, in your life, there are other things that you will have planned, and planning one's own funeral, a celebration of life, a memorial, does not mean that you are at this moment dying. It means that you want to have a plan for the future because you have a way that you want this stage of your life to be thought about. And some people will write their own eulogies. Some people will really create something that they feel really, really comfortable with and really, really proud of, connected to who they are and how they live their life. And it's something that you can build on at any stage in your life, right? So it's, some of it is a little bit about who do you want to tell the story of your life at the end of your life. And, you know, that may be people that you love in your life who you're really happy to have them do that. Or you may feel like, I want to have a voice in this.
And you may want to have a party while you're alive, right? A celebration of life, coming together and really honoring who you are, your legacy, your relationships, your love, your friendships. You might want to do that, or do both. You have choices. And I guess that's what we're all talking about, right? The different choices and things to think about. We really wanted to show you the difference between palliative care and hospice. We put it on paper, boom, right there, 1 and 2. Palliative care is, its goal is to decrease physical and emotional suffering, and it is truly available from the time of diagnosis throughout the course of treatment. The palliative care team works with your physician and is an addition to your other treatment options. It's about symptom management and feeling good and strong through treatment. Hospice is actually different. Of course, its goal is to provide comfort, decrease physical and emotional suffering, but it's there when there's no longer curative intent. You are then cared for by the hospice doctor and team. You're transferring care and assigning your benefits to the hospice program. So they're two different programs. They can be involved at 2 different times, but they're always there as an option.
So I think that the thing we wanted to reiterate here is, again, that palliative care is not something that is indicative of the end of life or a stage at the end of life. It's really, you know, once you find yourself with a diagnosis that is going to require long-term medical treatment care, that you are eligible for palliative care services and really can be helped by a palliative care team, which can help you to kind of minimize symptoms that you might be experiencing and issues that you might be facing. So again, we really wanted to make this distinction because sometimes people don't think that they are either eligible for palliative care services or that they want palliative care services because it means something different than what it means. It really does intend to be kind of a partner of services in your care.
The other things to consider, whether it's hospice, and now we're really talking about end of life, whether it's hospice and end of life doula, or even assisted suicide. These are things to think about and to consider. An end of life doula assists in the dying process and planning, many times works with the hospice team, and is one-to-one support really for you. And there are 10 jurisdictions in the US that assisted suicide is legal.
And again, when you see this on a slide, it looks clearer and cleaner. In life, I think it's hard to make a decision about assisted suicide, and you have to really think through if that's something that you want in your life and how you would interact with that information with your loved ones. And interesting to also think about the number of states that it is not legal in. So it's kind of a complicated concept in that way, to think that you could be thinking about doing something that may be illegal in the area that you live in. So as we've been thinking about this, we've been thinking that, like, in some ways, oh, I don't know, advanced care planning is kind of a boring name. And if you think about it, you think about, we all in our life have these things that we want and these ways that we want to be understood. And even for people who are not organized at all, sometimes you still will want to organize these documents. And you think about it like, are you really going to change who you are at different stages in your life, or who you've been? And how do you find people and things to help support what you need at the given moments in your life? So if you need help documenting your healthcare decisions, or you need help understanding what these things are, or some of our goal really has been here to lay out the ideas so that you see them, that you become familiar with them, they become less threatening, and then you're able to reach out to people for help as you need them. But separate from some of the more legal documents, you think about some of the emotional things that you encounter, and you think about, like, who are the people you really care about in your life, and what are the stories that you want people to know about your life? It could take you as many years to write the stories and capture the things as you are old, or even longer than the number of years that you have lived. So I think it's interesting to think about, what do you feel like you've accomplished? What do you want to still accomplish? And what are your goals for today? And maybe your goals for tomorrow or next week, but also what have been your goals? What have you liked about your life? And what do you want people to know about you and the essence of who you are, or even how you feel about them? So thinking about ways of bringing pieces of your life together in such a way that people will really have a sense of who you are today, tomorrow, and for many decades into the future.
This gives you an opportunity also to think about, are there things that you want to create, photos, memorabilia, pride and joy items that you might want to start thinking about who in your family you would want to leave them to, or do you? It gives you an opportunity to create almost we called it a hope chest of messages. Some people will write letters to loved ones for future events, create different gift packages. I know someone that created a scavenger hunt all throughout their house with little stickies on the bottom. This goes to Susie. This goes to Joe. And family found little messages of hope. I don't know. This is about who you are and how you want to be remembered. And it gives you an opportunity to do that. Or you may choose not to, right? Nancy?
I was just going to say, I think the idea is to give yourself permission to be yourself. And if who you are is funny and creative, you want that to come through. If who you are is provocative and difficult, that's what you want to come through. Like, it may be that you feel like, oh, these are really interesting, but everybody can deal with this long after I'm gone. And I think that's one way of being, that you don't have to feel like you have to take care of everything in your life, but you can feel like, if you want to take care of things in your life, if you want to give people things while you're alive, that's also very different than leaving something for someone. And some of it matters, kind of, again, who you are and what meaning you want to bring to both the physical things in your life and the emotional things in your life. So do you want to leave a note? Do you want to leave something for somebody, or do you want to give it to them tomorrow? What do you need in your life right now? And I think that this is kind of a bit of where this comes from, thinking about what you need, what you want, and how you want to plan this part of your life in the same way that you would plan any part of your life. And I think that we know that there are some of you who are out there who really are planners. And then there are some people who, again, really dread planning. So I think that we're thinking we want you to understand who you are, what you want, and then places to go for help with some of those things. These are not things that you have to do by yourself.
To that point, we have a whole resource list here that might be helpful. This will be available that you can copy, and you can always call us at OCRA. Our patient support line is available, and it's something that we do and talk about all the time. Sometimes it's helpful to talk it through. You can speak to your medical team, your hospital social worker. If you have young children, you might want to talk to a child life specialist. There are lots of options if that's what you want to do and you want to explore. So we wanted to provide this for you so you have some good resources.
So we'd like it if you see this presentation as opening a conversation, not closing a door, right? So that really there are services available to you and many meaningful conversations ahead. And we hope this puts you in a position to just think about which of those conversations you'd like to have and when.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.